so they put them to sleep, basically. The
CA.
apples' respiration rate was so slow that they lived longer, they stayed crisper longer.
Right. And and how do they do that?
They pump away the oxygen,
Oh, I see.
regulate the oxygen in the room.
Totally remove it?
Not totally, it's like 1% or something. Just
So
they
it's-
gotta breathe, but not
Right,
to
so
breathe
what
fast. And
What do they replace regular air with? What, like nitrogen or carbon
they
dioxide?
just,
Or
as far as I know, they just pump out oxygen. I don't have a CA room. I have a small cold storage, but I don't have a CA room. Are we talking now? Or is it,
We're gonna start
Is that one way?
when you're ready.
Sorry.
All right, let's
Move
go.
your chair back about there. Perfect.
Okay. All right, so we're just gonna start with if you could say your name.
All
where you're
right, my
from.
name is Bob Ryder, and as of this week, I'm 89 years old. As of this week, so yes, I am an old timer, and I do qualify for history as far as agriculture is concerned in Germantown. I got to start out with Germantown Central. I graduated in 1943. Those were war years. World War II was on, so I couldn't wait to get out of Central and go to service. I volunteered right away for the Navy and joined all my friends because our graduation class was so minute. Most of the guys were going already. So it was strange circumstances. I was embarrassed to graduate. Anyway, went to the Navy for 3 years. Saw the Pacific, several battles, and was familiar with the service, and saw a lot of the country. Anyway, then, my father had 2 farms. He had this farm and a surrounding farm. And he had this house. So I was leaning toward agriculture when I got out of the service. And they had the GI Bill, which paid for college. So why not take advantage of that and go into agriculture where my father already had to start, right?
Right.
So that counted for 4 years at Cornell, which I graduated in 1950. Well, yes, I learned a lot, but can you imagine the turnover and the changes of what I learned in 1950 as compared to this year? Agriculture has changed completely. Where we used to plant trees 30 feet apart, now they are 2 feet apart. 2 feet apart in a row, and just wide enough so that a tractor can get through between the rows. And that takes like 1,000 trees, where you used to have 25. It's crazy.
Right.
And the varieties that they want so change every year. So they come up with a new variety that the public right away said, oh boy, this is the best. So us old timers with our old varieties are sitting here with something that's also what happened was the chain stores came around. Mm-hmm. Chain stores wanted or their typical order would be 100 bushels of 3-inch size Macintosh, okay? They don't come to a small farmer. That's why all this anybody in Germantown had a fruit farm. Mm-hmm. Everybody. All your neighbors had a fruit farm. And we have all gone out of business. It's just, there's no demand for the small farm, but we can't qualify for the for the chain stores. Plus the fact that now the chain stores and about everybody else wants apples washed and waxed. Waxed because that stay on the shelf longer.
Right.
I can't do that. A little guy can't do that. Mm-hmm. So I gotta say that the small farmer is doomed in Germantown. That's why there are so few of us left. In Germantown, I can only rapidly think of 3 of us who qualify for fruit farms. Everything else is going the way of building lots. That's what happened here. I used to farm 150 acres of apples, of fruit. I'm down to 20 now. Because we've been selling off lots here and there, trying to, that's where the money is. Besides, I'm all by myself. My children, I have 3 children who I'm very proud of, but show me the money, Dad. Show me the money, you know. I'd love to have them here with me. They've all got good jobs. And I'm lucky if they come back a day or 2 a week just to visit. So it's a sad state. I think everything's going to come from China or the sea. It seems that way to me. I think it's terrible. That's not the way it's supposed to be.
You were talking about your children, and then I'd like to kind of hear about your childhood, how you got into the farming. I know that your father had a farm, but when it was that you decided
Well, I thought I touched on that because I wasn't a farmer. I grew up in the city of Germantown,
right.
which is really a pretty small village. That's where I was born and lived until I got out of high school. And all of a sudden, they decided to come back to the farm. But that was after I got out of Cornell. We lived in Germantown.
Did you know when you were young that you wanted to be part of the farming?
No. I wasn't a farmer as a kid. Oh, I'd come down and visit my dad because he had a farm. I'd come down and visit and come down and eat a couple of apples or pick a few cherries, something like that. But no, I had no natural inclination. But I've loved it. I guess I've loved the challenge because to fight Mother Nature, boy, it's a challenge. I have always had a job as well as farming. Always. I worked either for Agway for several years. I worked for as a liquor salesman even. As a liquor salesman for I guess 4 or 5 years. And that's where I made most of my money is, and it wasn't on a farm. It was because I worked on the outside, and because we always had a hail or a drought or too much rain. The bees, there's another angle right here. The bees are dying out, so pollination has been a big factor here. It used to be you'd have to fight bees off. Now, no more. They're just dying, unbeknownst to most of the people. All right, I wish I could tell you more, but
Is there a time that sticks out in your memory when farming was kind of in its heyday in Germantown, where I know you said that there was everybody had a farm.
Right.
Is there a story that kind of jogs your memory about that a specific time when?
because we could all make money then. But there were two cold storages in Germantown. My dad was the manager of one of them, so that's why I know. And beside that, there were several trucking firms. We'd take apples down to New York City. We'd all take them down at 3 harvest of the day, take them down to the trucking firms, and right away, no more trucking firms. You don't do that. That's. I paint a pretty dismal picture, but it is dismal.
Right.
It's unfortunate. I would love to continue farming. Well, how much more time can I have farming? But I love to have my kids. Every father would love to have his kids on a farm,
Right.
Taking his place anyway. To look forward to.
What about? Let's talk about something. That's a good memory. How about what about the time that you met your wife, that you met Anne? Is there a story behind that?
When I met Anne?
Yeah.
Anne was a school teacher in Germantown, a home ec. Yeah, I remember standing in a corner in town and seeing this girl go down through with her red raincoat. Pretty girl. And anyway, we got introduced, and my first introduction with her, I offered her a box of apples. Now, That's pretty big. When you're gonna introduce you offer a girl a box of apples. Love at first sight, I guess. Yeah.
How old were you guys when you met?
27 and 25.
Okay. And did you get married soon after, or?
Well, that's when we got married. So
Oh, okay.
we only courted for a year, I guess it was.
How was the wedding day?
How was the wedding day? Cold, snowy. When we got married in her hometown up in Verona, Sherrill. And I remember leaving that church, and boy, the snow was coming down. Oh, it was cold. And we got about 10 miles away that night. That's as far as we went. We camped that first night. That was memorable too. But in those days, I had an old Chevrolet coupe. And we took a trip, we got to Washington. In those days, that was quite a thing to go for a honeymoon to clear to Washington. DC, not state.
How was I know you'd spoken about going to the war. How was the town prior to all of that? When all the boys were shipping off, was there a different feeling in the town?
It was a patriotic war. All of us felt it was our duty to go to war, defend America, and the women were canning and everything. There was all kinds of gasoline rationing and donating lard and fat for explosives. That was a real war. That was, you were proud to be it. And this stuff now is unnecessary, seems to me. They're not defending our country. We were defending our country.
And then when you came back, did you go straight into college, or did you spend any more time in town before you went to Cornell?
When I came back from
the
service,
yeah.
no, I came back and right away. I got out in June, and we started, I guess it was that month in Cornell. 4 years. Played on the baseball team at Cornell, 3 years. I'm kind of proud of that. I even went down had a chance with the Giants. When they were Polo Grounds, I played there.
Oh, can you tell me a story about that experience going down and playing with the?
Yeah, that was the era of Leo DeRocher was manager, and just for what it's worth, Bobby Thompson, who hit that big home run to defeat the Dodgers. I don't know if you're aware of this. I alternated ground balls with him at shortstop. I was pretty proud of that.
Yeah.
Alternated ground balls, picking up. Yeah, and then they took me down to Florida for a tryout. I was down there through Easter vacation. Instead of working on the farm where my father wanted me to be, I went down to Florida to good years.
Did you play baseball in for the school in Germantown?
Yeah, for years.
Yeah.
Well, we had Legion ball then, county. There were something like, I don't know, 10 teams in those days, a county league. And yeah, I played shortstop for them for 8 or 9 years. After I came back from they were good. It was good baseball too. They were a good league.
Did you guys go to like the sectionals or to any finals or anything? Or is there a story of a?
Won a championship a couple of years.
Oh yeah. What year was that?
But that doesn't amount to too much in those days. We got a cup.
Doing all over.
And then I went into managing Little League. I loved Little League too. I took care of the Little League teams as a manager. Because the kids, 10 and 11.
What was like an average day as a teenager in Germantown? School, and then what were kids doing at that time?
After high school,
or during high school?
That's interesting. I don't know exactly what. See, I lived in town. I didn't live on a farm then. I lived in town, and I guess my life has always been obsessed with sports. We always, but come from a small school, we didn't have a football team to, didn't have it. Just baseball and soccer. So it was a pretty limited, just little interleague stuff, make up teams. So that's all I can remember.
How have you experienced not necessarily the farming, but the town dynamic change over the years? What has been the biggest standout for you about
New York City has come up here.
Mhm.
New York City has absorbed all this farmland. It's no more. The farm people are gone or recessed into smaller areas, and you go into town now, and all the people, our church, you don't even know people in church from 10 years ago. It's all New York City people coming up and taking over. Which is all right, because they bring up money, and we need money. A little bit different breed, though. They're not the farm type people. They have minds of their own, right or wrong. That's progress.
What would you say is the what's the most important thing about Germantown to you? What does it represent to you? If you could sum it up in a story or in a couple words or feelings, what does this town mean to you?
Home. Like I say, I've been in, I guess, 48 states and a lot of countries, and did a lot of traveling, but I always came home. And it seems like so many of the kids who leave home come back to home, to Germantown. There's something kind of homey. That's the best description I think I can come up with. Home.
Yeah.
You can walk down the street in Germantown normally and say hi to about anybody, which is a nice thing. Wave to everybody, and it's a wonderful feeling to be accepted and be able to pass the time of day with most everybody you meet.
Right.
So I think our market in town has breakfast, and it's well attended. I think so many people want to have breakfast just to say hello to people, it's a big thing. Small town stuff is nice to know most of your people, except for,
Can you tell me a story about one of the days that your children were born? I know you have a couple of kids. Is there a story that sticks out in your mind about
when they were born?
Yeah. Is there a...
You better talk to my wife about that. It isn't like today. You stay right in their room with them. They wouldn't allow me in the room when our children were born. I couldn't get to the door. I could check through the window. I did that, I know, but I didn't. No, I didn't assist in any way. I probably would have fainted anyway. No, I missed it, that part. Probably would have liked it. I don't know.
There's a lot of history in the town. This town goes back a very long way to 1710 when the Germans came over, and a lot of the families are still the same last names or the same the same lineage. Why do you think the people have stayed around this long? 300 years. We just celebrated 300 years.
The Livingston name is big here. Robert R. Livingston was granted, I guess, thousands of acres originally, and Livingston's Rockefellers, another big name here. Lashers. And it's true, they have stayed pretty much. It's a lineage deal. the Woods Road in our town is pretty famous for famous people that, if you ought to go down that way, it's a pretty nice area.
If there's one thing that you could kind of pass on to the future generations in this town, this is kind of why we're doing this project, is to give the future generations the opportunity to learn about the town through their own history and through the history of the people that lived here. If there's one thing you could kind of pass on to them, what do you think it would be?
Yeah, that's pretty hard. That's really. I wish I could come up with some wisdom here. I don't know. It's a great town. I'm proud to be a Germantowner. I love it. But my kids, for instance, have all gone away. You know, they're not Germantowners anymore. They all got good jobs away. They love to come back. And they say, Dad, don't change anything. Don't sell anything. Leave it as it is. They want to remember as it is. But they moved away because I guess money is the bottom line. They all, families and whatnot, got to raise. That's the best description I can say. It's worthwhile because they come back sooner or later, but maybe not necessarily to stay. I willed, going to wills and deeds and whatnot, but I'm trying to keep my family here through wills and deeds.
Right.
If they will or not, but I'm worried.
Right. Is there anything that you were interested in asking, or?
I guess we sort of had skipped by a lot of your childhood, and I think that sometimes that can bring up the most memories and some of the most interesting sort of quirks about a town is what it was like to be a child here. Are there any stories from when you were in elementary school that you remember, or times you got into trouble with your friends? Anything like, does anything like that ring a bell of a story that you might tell would sort of show what it was like to be a child in Germantown?
As I say, I was born in Germantown. I lived in Germantown, which is very close to today's Central House. It was called the Central House in those days, only it was a real pub. And I can remember as a child staying awake into the wee hours because there's so much drinking going on in the Central House. And those days, they used to bring in, we used to have migrants. The labor force in those days were people who just didn't have any money, primarily white, and who would work for a day's wage and then spend it all in a bar or something like that. Today we have to have employed Jamaicans or Mexicans to get up a labor force. But as you say, as a kid, I can remember that Central House was booming. They'd come in, they made their $5 a day and they'd spend it down to the Central House.
Did you ever go to Central House when you got older?
As I got older.
What was it like inside? Can you describe it? What did it look like back then?
Well, the one experience was we had one of the fellows who took over the Central House. I don't know if he bought it or what. It came in the name of Lou Rinders. He was a real character. He had exploits. He'd go outside and shoot a shotgun, and just in town to wake it up, I guess. I don't know. He was a weirdo. But he ran the bar, and that was part of it. Explosive. He would do weird things. Dress up as a girl, I know. Lou Rinders. Gone. This is trouble. This growing old stuff, everybody's gone. Everybody that you know and friends, gone. I was on a baseball team that we was talking about. I am the last survivor of that baseball team. They are all gone. And it breaks my heart because they were good boys. Okay.
what was I know the school has changed a lot, but how big was your class?
Oh, yeah, I'm telling you, when we graduated, it was war years. And man, if we had 15, that was a lot.
Yeah.
I can't remember counting them, but and of the 15, 12 were girls.
You said, I'm sorry.
No,
do you
go
mind?
ahead.
You said that you were eager to go into the service. What were your expectations of what it would be like, and how was it different? How was it different than how you thought it would be?
Well, I was lucky enough, I think back, I was lucky enough I volunteered. I was a volunteer, and I enjoyed for the Navy, because I just couldn't see crawling around on my hands and knees in the jungle, and that did not appeal to me. But Navy was exploring to me. I loved travel. Man, we traveled.
Where did you go?
Mostly the Pacific, Hawaii, and I went to Japan. And we were all ready to land. We were a farmer. It's a great feeling when you, during bloom time, walk out through an orchard. It's just great, you think there's nothing better in the world to go out here in the blossom time. Everything is blooming. Or when you've had a successful season, the fruit is there and unblemished, and okay, that's nice. But then reality sets in, and you realize that half the time you're beat, either by hail or wind or drought. Half the time. So how can I encourage my kids to stay here, Or any year Germantown, I can't, that's why they aren't here.
Right.
It's too bad. It was a great way of life back in the 50s, 40s, 30s. Now they're all golf courses.
One other thing that's kind of a little bit on the side that I've heard a little bit of stories about when I was at Blue Stores before it burned down. There was a lot of bootlegging going on around here back during Prohibition time. Were you aware of it, or can you tell us any stories about that?
I can't say firsthand. I know that, all right, before Rinder's, there was Jake Eckert owned the Central House. And stories galore about that he, down in the cellar, was a concoctioner, that he used to really get involved big time. I can't vouch for that. How do I, I'm pretty sure that there is truth to this, and because there's so much talk about it. But I was young and no, I can't say it, but I bet you there was.
Yeah, I heard stories that Legs Diamond owned a distillery over by Blue Stores, and they were sending it by the barrelful down to the city during Prohibition.
Oh, it's quite common. We had a lot of grapes in here, My neighbor up above had Chris Augustinovich was a concoctioner. He used to and sold wine in his cellar, about a barrel. They put it in barrels and did quite a job, but on a small time. All right. Okay.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. That was absolutely awesome. It was really great to hear everything and to.
I mean well, and I hope you got something out of it.
We got everything we need. That was
All right.
absolutely perfect.
Okay.
I really appreciate it.
Good.
Thank you very much. Sarah will get
Yeah,
that.
I'll unmic
She'll
you.
she'll